Before you can understand how Lil Wayne escaped Cash Money with control of Young Money, you have to understand one thing. The weapon that changed the balance of power was built by Birdman himself. Birdman created the structure. He taught Wayne how ownership worked. He showed him how leverage could turn a small operation into an empire. Then Wayne used those same lessons to challenge the man who raised him. Most men sign with a major label and call it a victory. A mastermind signs with a major label and calls it a tool. Birdman understood that difference before almost anyone in rap. He protected himself against one of the largest corporations in the music industry. But years later, he failed to protect himself from the air growing inside his own empire. This is not simply a story about money. It is a story about power, a father, a son, a contract, and the moment the student became strong enough to challenge the teacher. (1991), New Orleans. No national distribution, no powerful investors, no major label waiting to open the door. Brian Williams and Ronald Williams built Cash Money Records from the ground up. The world would come to know them as Birdman and Slim. But before the platinum records, the private jets, and the mansion videos, they were two brothers trying to build something in a city the music industry treated like an afterthought. New York had the attention. Los Angeles had the machinery. New Orleans had talent. What it did not have was access. Birdman and Slim understood that waiting for the industry to discover them was not a strategy. So they built locally. They found artists. They recorded music. They moved product through neighborhoods, clubs, and independent stores. They turned regional attention into leverage. And from the beginning, they moved like owners. That decision matters. Most people entering the music industry are trying to become successful artists. Birdman was trying to build a successful company. There is a difference. An artist thinks about the next song. An owner thinks about the structure underneath every song. Who controls the recording? Who owns the publishing? Who receives the money after everybody else takes a percentage? Who still has power after the popularity disappears? Birdman was asking those questions before Cash Money had national recognition. He understood that talent could create attention, but ownership created survival. That belief would eventually bring Universal to New Orleans. By 1998, Cash Money was no longer a neighborhood operation. Juvenile was gaining momentum. The Hot Boys were forming a movement. Mannie Fresh had created a sound that did not resemble anything coming from New York or Los Angeles. Cash Money had something the major labels wanted: authenticity, a loyal regional audience, a sound that could not be manufactured in a corporate office. Universal came to the table. The reported value of the agreement was approximately $30 million. Now, stop right there. Most people hear $30 million and think the story is about the check. It was not. The real story was what Birdman and Slim refused to surrender. Reports describe the arrangement as a multi-year distribution and publishing agreement involving advances, recording budgets, promotion, and revenue sharing. Universal would provide the machinery that Cash Money lacked: national distribution, manufacturing, retail placement, promotion, international reach, but Cash Money reportedly retained control of its masters and publishing. That was the victory. Birdman did not reject the major label system, he used it. Universal owned the roads, Cash Money owned what traveled on them. That is how a small company uses a larger company without disappearing inside it. Birdman understood a rule that destroys most people in business. Access is not ownership. A man may allow you inside the building. That does not mean your name is on the deed. Birdman wanted Universal's strength without surrendering Cash Money's foundation, and the structure worked. In November 1998, Juvenile released 400 Degrees. The album exploded. Ha introduced the world to a voice, rhythm, and language that belonged completely to New Orleans. Then Back That Ass Up became unavoidable. Clubs, radio, television, neighborhoods far beyond Louisiana. The album would eventually become certified 4 times platinum. The Hot Boys followed, the big Tymers followed. Mannie Fresh became the architect behind one of the most recognizable sounds in rap. Cash Money was no longer asking the industry for respect. The industry was trying to understand how two brothers from New Orleans had built a national empire without giving away the company's core. Birdman had beaten the traditional system. But every empire eventually faces a question more dangerous than expansion: succession. Who carries the company when the original roster changes? Who becomes the next face? Who protects the empire when the first generation disappears? Birdman already believed he had found the answer. The answer had been standing beside him since he was a child. Lil Wayne. Dwayne Michael Carter Jr. entered the Cash Money world when he was still a child. He was approximately 11 years old when he began working with the label. By the time the Universal Agreement arrived in 1998, Wayne was around 15. He was not sitting inside the negotiations reading contracts, but he was watching everything. He watched Birdman control the company. He watched artists come and go. He watched relationships break apart. He watched the label survive every departure. BG left, Juvenile left, Mannie Fresh eventually left. The original Hot Boys era collapsed. Wayne stayed. That loyalty changed his position. He was no longer simply the youngest artist on the roster. He became the bridge between the original Cash Money and whatever came next. Then his music began changing. The Carter arrived in 2004. The voice was sharper. The hunger was louder. Wayne was no longer waiting behind older artists. He was becoming the center of the company. Then came the Carter 2, the mixtapes, the Drought, Dedication, the Drought 3. Later, No Ceilings. Wayne flooded the streets with music. He took other rappers' beats and made people forget who originally owned them. Every verse sounded like a warning. Every mixtape made the argument stronger. Lil Wayne believed he was the best rapper alive. Then the public began believing it too. Birdman saw what was happening. His instinct had been correct. The child he helped raise had become the future of Cash Money. But Birdman did not only give Wayne more money, he gave him a position inside a new company, Young Money Entertainment. Now understand this clearly. Young Money was not originally an independent kingdom completely separated from Cash Money. Court records later described it as a joint venture. Cash Money held the majority position. Wayne held the minority position. Birdman still had control on paper, but paper control and real control are not always the same thing. Wayne had the name, Wayne had the momentum, Wayne had artistic relationships. Wayne had become the reason young artists wanted to enter the building. Birdman believed he had created a structure that kept Wayne loyal while allowing him to develop the next generation. On paper, the decision made sense. Cash Money had the infrastructure, Universal had the distribution network, Wayne had the cultural power. Young Money would sit inside the empire and create another empire. Then Wayne found Drake, a rapper and singer from Toronto who did not sound like the traditional Cash Money artist. Drake could rap, he could sing, he could create street records, emotional records, and radio records without changing identities. His early business structure involved Aspire Music Group, Young Money, Cash Money, and Universal. The ownership chain was complicated, but the cultural result was simple. Drake became enormous. Then came Nicki Minaj, sharp voice, explosive personality, elite ability. She could destroy a verse, create a pop record, and command attention in any room. Young Money was no longer a side project. It was becoming the future of the entire Cash Money system. Drake, Nicki, Tyga, a new generation of commercial power operating under Wayne's name. Birdman still held the majority position in the joint venture, but Wayne held something that percentages could not fully measure. He held the relationships, creating the value. That was the danger. Birdman had not given Wayne complete independence. He had given him something more complicated. A powerful minority position inside a company could make Wayne indispensable. The more successful Young Money became, the more leverage Wayne gained. The structure was supposed to keep the empire together. Instead, it created a second center of power inside the same building. Birdman controlled Cash Money. Wayne represented Young Money. For a while, those interests moved together. The money was flowing. The artists were winning. The relationship still looked like family. But family is strongest when everyone believes the future belongs to them. Once the money slows down, the album gets delayed, or one side believes the other is being dishonest, family language begins disappearing. Then the contract enters the room. And contracts do not remember birthdays. They do not remember loyalty. They do not remember who helped raise whom. They remember percentages, obligations, rights, and what happens when one side refuses to perform. By 2014, the relationship between Birdman and Wayne was no longer holding the structure together, and the same company built to preserve loyalty was about to become Wayne's escape route.